Since 1855, district attorneys have been responsible for prosecuting perpetrators of crime in Massachusetts. Today, in addition to being the county's top law enforcement official and chief prosecutor, the DA's office is committed to the protection of our communities through extensive outreach and preventative programs. Welcome to the Scales of Justice with Plymouth County District Attorney Timothy Cruz. I'm Donna Rodriguez, your host for today. Welcome, Tim.
Donna, thanks for having me.
We're really excited to have you on the channel and to have you start a new show for us. Tell me a little bit about your goals for this show.
Well, I think our goals are really to make the public aware of what it is that we actually do in the district attorney's office. I think lots of times people just see Law and Order or one of the television shows and they think that's what the DA does. And in actuality, it's far from that. There's so many different things that we do, from prosecuting cases and now really nowadays preventing things also.
And you do so much public outreach. Before we get into talking about all of your different programs, tell me a little bit about you and how you came to become the Plymouth County District Attorney. It's been 12 years, hasn't it?
It's 12 and a half, but who's counting? No, you're right. It's been 12 and a half years for me being DA, but prior to that, I grew up here in Plymouth County. I grew up in a little town called West Bridgewater, where I went to the public schools. I attended Boston College after that, Suffolk Law School. Was fortunate enough to become an assistant district attorney here in Plymouth County. The DA at the time was a gentleman by the name of William C. O'Malley. Gave him my first job, and from 1985 to 1989, I was an assistant district attorney in Brockton, Plymouth, Hingham, and Wareham district courts, all around our county, trying cases, doing what every ADA does on a daily basis.
So you have an extensive background in the DA's office and as well as in this community.
I think so. I mean, when I left the DA's office, I worked in private practice for about 12 years. I did a lot of criminal defense work also. And then eventually I was appointed district attorney when the prior DA to me, Mike Sullivan, was appointed U.S. attorney by President Bush. I was appointed by Governor Jane Swift to finish out Mike's term. And then I've run for that office 3 times since then. District attorney is an elective office, and it's also a 4-year term. And I've been fortunate in succeeding all 3 times.
What is it that drives you to want to stay in this office and stay in your job?
I think it's a great job in which you can really help people. You know, the job of being the chief law enforcement official or the top prosecutor, the many things that we do in our community, whether it's going to schools, whether it's talking to children, and dealing with the cutting edge sort of issues that are out there on a daily basis, I think people read about. I think trying to help people and trying to keep people safe while at the same time upholding the Constitution is walking a fine line, but many people do it and they do it very well.
Now, give us a little bit, for folks who might not be familiar with everything that your office does, give us a sense of the scope. For instance, how many offices and how many employees do you have?
Well, we have roughly 155 employees, including a state police group that is assigned to my office. Every district attorney's office has a CPAC unit, is what they're called, the Crime Prevention and Control Unit. And we have 21 troopers who work specifically at our direction, and we deal with all the homicides and unintended deaths by statute go to the DA. And we also are involved in numerous narcotics investigations, as well as any other issue that may pop up, conflicts or issues with the local towns. So we have a lot of troopers that work for us. Mm-hmm. We also have roughly 60 lawyers who work in the 4 district courts and the Superior Court. So we have a district court in Hingham, Brockton, Wareham, and Plymouth. And we also have a Superior Court in Plymouth and Brockton, but primarily the criminal session remains in Brockton, where the majority of issues occur, unfortunately.
And that's a pretty extensive unit of people working. With the police and working with you within your department, are you working with them on investigations?
Yeah, we certainly work very well, I think, with a lot of the police. A regular crime that occurs in any of our jurisdiction, prior to being a homicide or if it's a major drug investigation, in which individuals all know what's going on anyways, all those groups talk. But a regular crime occurs, no matter where it may be, in Plymouth or Rochester or wherever in our county. That local police department will handle that case. They'll come in, they'll make an arrest, they'll write a police report, they'll take out what's known as an application for a criminal complaint. If they're going to charge somebody with a crime, that document will be taken to the appropriate jurisdiction court, whether it be, if it's Rochester, it would go to Wareham District Court. And then at that point, the district attorney would be involved, the assistant district attorney would be involved once the arraignment occurs at Wareham District Court.
Now, to give me a sense of the type of work that you're doing, and there's so much happening all the time, I don't know if people really understand some of the increases in crime and what some of the trends are. What have you been seeing over the last, say, 4 to 5 years in Plymouth County?
Well, I think for a period of time, we did see a downtick in violent crime across the county of Plymouth. I think a lot of that went hand in hand with removing a lot of violent drug dealers off the street. Unfortunately, what we've learned and what we do know is that the vast majority of violent crime is done by a very small group of individuals. I think statistically speaking, it's like 20%, 80% of the crime is done by 20% of the people. So we continue to focus on that 20%, the repeat offenders, the individuals who are committing havoc, not just in our urban settings, but also in our suburban areas. So we've worked with federal groups, we've worked with the DEA, ATF, the U.S. Attorney's Office, we work with the FBI, we work with all sorts of groups as pertains to how can we make sure we remove these individuals who are hurting the vast majority of the people in our county, who will hurt you or hurt your family or your loved ones without thinking about it. And by working together, I think we've been very successful in driving those numbers down. Just recently, however, some of our laws have changed. Our minimum mandatory drug laws, which I find to be incredibly effective, have been reduced to some extent. And we're also dealing with issues in the drug lab right now across the Commonwealth, from just the Annie Dukin situation, which is just, unfortunately, a travesty for a lot of good cases. We're getting thrown out because of the fact of what she did in our court system.
That's unbelievable. Now, with the changes that you have been seeing in the communities too, you've, in addition to working with other enforcement officials, you've done a lot of outreach into your communities to pull people in to work with you.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when I was a young prosecutor back in the 80s, when I had a file, a blue file was a juvenile file. When I was a juvenile ADA, when you opened up that file, there usually was a police report. Maybe there was the defendant's record, and that was pretty much it. Now we have this, actually we've had it for more than the last decade, community-based juvenile justice. For juvenile cases, we can roundtable issues. We can sit down and talk to people at the schools. We can talk to the Department of Mental Health. We can talk to the probation department. And we can also do that without worrying about we're violating any privileges because it's all authorized by the statutes here in Massachusetts. We can talk about those issues. We can also talk about a lot of the issues that are going on as pertains to the drug situation. What we find out is that when local aid gets cut, unfortunately, more schools call the DA's office, can you help us with this problem? And since I've been DA, we've never said no. Somehow we're going to find a way. And we have an individual in our office, his job is to look for grants, federal grants, state grants. How can we work together? How can we, instead of all fighting against each other for these grants, for these monies, how can we bring in more towns, more communities, so that we can get these resources and use them to help our kids to make sure they don't go down that wrong path? Like I said, back when I was a young prosecutor, we didn't have any preventive programs. The man that was the director of our grants, when I first became DA some 12 and a half years ago, he came into my office and he was working in the DA's office at the time. And I said, I knew him because he used to be a probation officer. And I said, what are you doing here? And he told me what he was doing. And he said, and I looked at him and I said, so you're the director of preventative resources? I go, what the heck is that? Because we never had that when I was a young prosecutor. For the next hour and a half, he told me about the programs we were involved in, and it was literally drinking from a fire hydrant. There was so much information coming at me, and it's really such powerful stuff that I think it's important now for the district attorney to be a leader, not just in the prosecutorial aspect, but also in the preventative aspect. And I think that's why you see more of myself, you see more of the sheriff here in Plymouth County, Joe McDonald. We're more involved, I think, than we've ever been.
And I think that makes a huge difference, as you mentioned before, collaborations. None of these issues that our communities are facing or our youth are facing stand on their own.
Right. Without
everybody working together and working, number one, preventative, but number two, education for the entire community is really the only way we're going to start to see any changes.
Right.
With funding cuts, as we know, when the schools, DARE programs have ended, and I'm sure you've seen a huge impact as a result of that. Tell me a little bit more about some of the other creative work that your department has been doing with others, such as the court system, to really address some of the issues, for instance, around crime as relating to drug use.
Well, drug and also alcohol use, which continues to be an issue. And when I first became DA, we've always had a diversion program in Plymouth County since I can remember. Bill O'Malley originally brought it back, I believe it was 1984 or 85. And really diversionary program, if a juvenile committed an offense, a nonviolent offense, and they had no prior record, if they did some community service, and if they stayed out of trouble, that case would be null pros, which meant the Commonwealth would choose not to prosecute, and they wouldn't get a record. One of the issues that I saw when I first became DA was the alcohol and, at that time, the marijuana issues. Marijuana at that time was had not been decriminalized, possession of less than an ounce. So we put together an adult diversion program for kids between the ages of 18 and 21, because what we were seeing was kids were getting arrested for a minor possession of alcohol or minor in possession of Class D substance, which was marijuana was. And they were being arrested and brought to court on it, and it was on their record, and it was affecting their ability to get jobs. It was affecting their abilities to get into colleges. So what we did, we put together a program, and so these kids now are brought to court like anybody else would, but they would not be arraigned. They would not have the official notification from the court read into the record. But what they would do is they'd sit down with my diversion officer, Paul Cashin, who's done a great job here in Plymouth for years and years, and they would sign a contract. He or she would agree to do 8 to 10 hours of community service, and also at the same time pay out of their own pocket to go to a program down in High Point, 4 different classes, to learn about the issues that are out there. Since 2003, I think we've had more than 3,000, 3,500 kids involved in that program, countywide. And we never see about 90% of those kids again.
That's fantastic.
So I think it's really worked well, and I think those are the sort of things that we really want to continue to do to help the kids go on with their lives. Kids make mistakes. Everybody understands it. Everybody has made mistakes in their lives. The rest of their lives shouldn't be ruined by that. So let's help the kids while we can help them, and let's focus our real energy and resources on the bad guys who are really committing the violent and dangerous crimes in our county.
You've also, through the court systems, have also in Plymouth County worked with taking people from direct criminal court through drug court and through mental health courts to be able to offer a lot of support and a lot of treatment for folks in addition to prosecution.
Right, and we have that down in Plymouth now for the last 2 or 3 years, I think it is. And Judge Minahan does a great job down there with a lot of those cases. And the good thing about it is that we certainly maintain control of those cases. In other words, they're talking of putting a new one in another court in our county right now. And it's important to me that people understand that we maintain control of those cases. In other words, an individual is not going to go to drug court until after there's been a disposition on that case. We don't want that hanging in abeyance, because I think it affects victims the wrong way. You don't want those cases hanging in that direction. If an individual is going to be going to drug court and they're going to be put on either some time in jail, which happens, or they're going to go on probation or suspended sentences, they're going to have something hanging over their head, and they're mandated to comply with the terms and conditions as set forth by the probation officer, including mandatory abstinence, mandatory urinalysis, things such as that. And if you violate the terms and conditions of your probation or your release, you'll be brought back to court, and you may go back to jail for 7 to 10 days, or you may go back to jail for a couple of weeks, or you may go back for the entire ride, contingent upon what your record is and the familiarity. And sometimes the judges may throw you out of drug court and just put you in jail. Because at some point I think that we have an obligation to help the people that we can help. But also, it's always been my position that once somebody does cross that line, even though addicts start out as addicts, what we see, the normal progression, is stealing from families and then stealing from other people. And then you unfortunately will sometimes get kids who will grab weapons and go to convenience stores. You've crossed the line. And now you're going to be dealt with in a criminal court session, and hopefully you'll be able to deal with your addiction problem while you're doing time, because people that break into your homes and steal your cars and also break into or do things at convenience stores or anybody else, they need to be dealt with severely. I
agree. We're going to take a brief break. When we come back, I'd like to start to talk a little bit more about some of your collaborative programs and the preventative programs that folks might not be aware of that come from your office.
Great.
Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for joining us with the Scales of Justice.
We've got a big problem, and we need your help.
It's called sexual assault, and it has to stop.
We have to stop it. So listen up.
If she doesn't consent, or if she can't consent,
it's a crime. It's wrong.
We need all of you to be part of the solution. This is about respect. It's about responsibility.
It's up to all of us to put an end to sexual assault. And that starts with you.
Because one is too many.
Welcome back to the Scales of Justice with Plymouth County District Attorney Timothy Cruz. I'm Donna Rodriguez, your host for today's episode. Now, we talked before about a lot of the legal aspects of what your office does, but you've mentioned many times that you have a lot of services and programs that people might not be aware of. Tell me a little bit about the community outreach work that you do.
Well, we continue to work with our various communities here in Plymouth County, of which we have 27 communities. We have the city of Brockton and 26 towns that we deal with virtually every day. whether it be through our diversionary programs or dealing with the local police departments, and also reaching out to the schools and having the schools reach out to us. Because it seems like whenever there is a topic that may pop up, whether it be sexting or internet safety issues, we're reached out to by schools. Can you come to our school? Can you talk to our kids? And we have a whole group of individuals who will go and talk to not just the kids during the day, which they will do, but also talk to the parents at night and let them also understand how important it is to be watching our kids on the internet safety level to make sure that they understand that, the internet is a great educational tool, but it also allows predators to try to get at our kids, and we've got to watch that stuff. Being constantly vigilant with whatever it is that we're doing. So I think that, when those issues pop up, we'll be there, and if we don't know about it, we'll find out about it.
Now, what are the responses you get from the kids versus their parents in some of these preventative programs you do?
I'll never forget going to a middle school here in Plymouth County, and I asked, right at the outset, how many of you kids have a phone? And there were probably 400 kids. I think every hand went up. And then I said, and how many of you kids have camera capabilities in that phone? And virtually, once again, every hand went up. I don't even know if they make phones anymore without cameras. And then I said, how many of you have ever taken an inappropriate picture? And the silence was deafening. They were all looking at each other. And we're talking to them about taking an inappropriate picture of yourself, a 12, 13-year-old boy or girl, and sending it perhaps to maybe your 12, 13-year-old boyfriend or girlfriend. And if it's an inappropriate picture, it could be a sex offense. And all of a sudden, you've disseminated a sex offense here, Casey, in Plymouth County. And, these are kids with phones. And lots of times, parents don't understand that the phones themselves can be limited. And I would suggest that lots of kids have their phones for emergency purposes now, but let's limit what the kids can get at, especially at a younger level. And let's be very careful about what our kids are doing, because they could be violating laws and they're going to have to be dealt with.
And violating laws when they don't even realize they're doing it.
Absolutely.
As well as putting themselves at risk.
And the parents may not understand it themselves. Because that's the world we live in. We live in an incredibly changing and challenging world right now. And us, from the prosecutorial standpoint, a lot of our laws haven't been changed or don't even exist have been changed from the 1990s, say, back before the internet, before there were cell phones. So lots of times an event may occur that you look at it and you say, wow, if that's not a crime, it should be a crime. And we're trying to, really pound square pegs into round holes. How do you make something fit? And then lots of times I'll end up going to the legislature. I'll talk to one of our state reps, one of our state senators, and say, hey, you know what? We really need to file some legislation on this. And usually it'll work out in the end.
Because you're right, technology is changing so quickly, it's making it much easier for people who are going to break the law or who are predators to reach out that much further and to connect to people who might not even realize, what's out there.
The computer forensics that are going on now, virtually every crime now, it used to just be, you'd have the computer for the child pornography. But nowadays, virtually every crime is dealing with computers and cell phones. And if a homicide occurs, the phones are very important to us, and the state police will get on the phones, is what we call it, trying to find out and locate where people may be at. And that's very important to do, but it also takes a lot of time. And you drop other things when you're doing that because of the limited resources that you have. So I think it's incredibly important for people to understand that, when a case happens, and when unfortunately, if there is a homicide, people should understand that the state police and the local police are involved, are working together. And our clearance rate in Plymouth County has always been incredibly high. Almost 90% of our homicides are cleared, which means somebody's arrested from that. And our conviction rate is in the vicinity of 85 and 90%.
That's impressive.
So it's really a lot of good people working really hard at the outset, doing everything that we can do. And whether it be old-fashioned police work, knocking on doors, or whether it's looking at phones and going through computers.
Now, you talk about collaborating again, and that really is a key to everything that you do. Other areas of prevention, I know that you do a lot of work with the Plymouth Youth Development Collaborative, and that's been around, gosh, about 8-10 years now. Tell me a little bit about the work you're doing with them for awareness for drugs and alcohol.
Yeah, once again, I mean, in working with the bigger groups and also the side groups by bringing things in, enhancing the ability to get information to kids and making sure that the kids are going to be in a position that they're going to learn more to keep themselves safe. And I don't think that there's any bigger issue right now than there is out there as pertains to the opiate addictions and the opiate overdoses that are out there. And through the Plymouth Youth Collaborative, the Plymouth North kids just put together that PSA regarding the opiate addictions. I know the governor was talking about that, which is a great thing. Education and awareness is key. And I think it's very key for our kids, especially at a younger age than what they're getting at the DARE level now. Because we still have 15 or 16 towns in our county that still have some version of DARE/school resource offices, which are very important things. School resource offices, in my opinion, are essential nowadays. To have a cop in that school so he can talk he or she can talk to the kids, have a familiarity, and the kids are no longer scared of that. And the information that they can extrapolate from there is incredible and can potentially save lives.
Absolutely. Being able to catch something before it's happening and being able to work with the police departments to be able to get into the schools and provide more prevention and education and support to the staff too, I would imagine.
Right.
Now tell me also, you work with children, you work with families, you also do a lot of work for elders in our community.
Right, we are working with the triad groups, which is, once again, it's a joint collaborative effort between law enforcement, between senior Senate councils on aging, and talking about a lot of the issues that are out there. We do senior luncheons every year that we run throughout the 4 jurisdictions of our 4 district courts here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, well, in Plymouth County. And what we do is we sit down, we have a lunch for the seniors, and we also will bring in an assistant U.S. attorney, we'll bring in a postal inspector, and they'll talk about the latest scams that are going on right now, or they'll be talking about, how to be careful and watch your money. We'll talk about powers of attorney. Be careful of people taking advantage of you, that you've worked hard your whole life, you've got money that you want to make sure, and assets that you want to go to your loved ones. Don't let people come in and flim-flam you. And unfortunately, a lot of these artists, these scam artists, take advantage of seniors' good nature, and they're very trusting, and lots of times they're embarrassed to talk about it. So we often tell the seniors, if something sounds too good to be true, it is. Nothing's ever changed with that. You haven't won the lottery up in Toronto and send just the tax money up there and they're going to bring you your brand new 2014 Cadillac. It's not happening. Be careful with what you do, and make sure that if you can learn a little bit, maybe we can prevent that from going on. And also, dealing with seniors, we also have our File a Life program, which basically, once again, it's information that the seniors can put on their refrigerator so that if something does happen of a medical nature, and if they're non-responsive at their home, if there is emergency medical technicians that are there, all their information can be right there in that, right here, their medical information, what they take, what they use, who their doctor is, their contact information. We also have a smaller one that they can carry in their purse or leave in their glove box, and there's also a sticker that they can put in the back of their car, and if an EMT sees that, they'll know to be looking somewhere on your body, or also in the trunk of the car or the glove box of the car, to get this and find the information that's there. And the good thing of this, once again, like our senior luncheons, is we prosecute drug dealers, we're allowed to make sure we go after their assets. We take their assets, we put it back into the community. So like I tell the seniors, when they get their file lives, don't thank me for them, thank your local drug dealers, because this is from their drug forfeited money, and also thank them for lunch, because they're paying for that too.
I think that's a brilliant use of money to be able to support people in the community and people at risk. This is available to other folks who might be at risk in addition to seniors. How do people get access to the File of Life?
All they have to do is call Barbara Faraday from my office, or they can talk to their local council on aging. We work with all the COAs here in Plymouth County. We provide them all the time when anybody wants them. So if you want them, just call your COA. They'll reach out to Barbara, and we'll certainly make sure everybody gets them.
Excellent, thank you, and we'll provide that information throughout the show as well. Now tell me also, you have a designated driver program.
Right, we have a Plymouth County designated driver program, which unfortunately, especially during either prom time or Christmas time or New Year's time, people may go out, maybe they'll drink too much, maybe they'll party too much, and if you go to one of these establishments, they'll be able to, and you'll see a little sticker there, and it's all throughout those various towns that are doing it. They can walk in there and they can have a soda for free, as long as you're the designated driver that night, and try to, once again, take down the devastation of drunk drivings that are going on and the terrible things that can happen from that. We're all about trying to prevent crime. Nobody wants to prosecute it, but we'll prosecute when it happens. But if we can prevent it, that saves everybody, and it'll save a life and maybe save a family.
And it starts conversations more and more often. So people are being more aware, and they are educating themselves about safety, keeping themselves and others safe.
And once again, the stickers and the magnets that are placed in various spots come through our drug forfeited money.
Excellent. Tell me about Deer Camp.
Deer Camp is a great program that we've had. I believe we're going into our 20th summer. It's a Plymouth County Drug Education Camp, and it's worked in conjunction with the local police departments. And it's an incredible thing that goes on. And really what it is, probably between 300 and 400 kids will be going for free to camp. This summer, I like to do every single summer. We used to do it for 2 weeks, but we didn't have enough towns to do that anymore. We do 1 week now. We do it at Whitman-Hanson High School. And the local school resource officers and DARE officers will select and ask kids that want to come to the camp, 5th, 6th grade or so. And it's not unusual for these kids to grow into the camp themselves, to be maybe a junior peer leader after they've been a student, maybe a peer leader at some point. And really what it is, it's a lot of kids from different towns, get to meet kids from different towns. They're put on teams. We have Olympics. We have breakfast in the morning. We have lunch at time, all provided for free and donations from some great companies across Plymouth County. And, you know, and give them some lessons and bring them some education. We have Black Hawk helicopters come down. The sheriff department brings the dogs down. We have fingerprinting that goes once again through the sheriff's department. And the kids have a great time. They really don't want it to end. And the beauty of it is that we're able to do something for the kids that perhaps wouldn't get that education and also perhaps wouldn't get to go to camp in the summer. So it's a lot of fun, and I know the kids really enjoy it.
Now, one of the other programs that you have, which is a very important program, unfortunately might not be preventative, but is helping to support people, or children in particular, the Children's Advocacy Center. Tell me about the work that you're doing through that.
The Plymouth County Children's Advocacy Center has been up and running on Pleasant Street in Brockton now for the last probably 10 years or so. Prior to that, it was held out of the district attorney's office. And unfortunately, in our county alone, every year there's between 400 and 500 children who are either sexually or physically abused by someone who should be guarding them, taking care of them, or even by a complete stranger. And many times these kids would be who were hurt. They'd have to, if they went to school, lots of times they'd disclose at school. And the teacher, they'd tell the teacher what would happen. And the teacher would say, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? She'd get the school nurse. The school nurse would come down, Johnny, tell the nurse. And then the boy would tell, or the girl would tell the nurse, go, oh my God, get the principal. The principal would come down, tell the story over and over again. They'd tell it 7 or 8 times. And by the end of that time period, they don't want to tell it anymore. You know, think of the most embarrassing, terrible thing that's ever happened to you, and you're going to repeat it to a bunch of strangers over and over again. So the CAC allows us to bring these kids into a child-friendly atmosphere, to talk to them with trained forensic interviewers, videotaped behind a wall where they don't see it, and they're able to tell us what happened. It helps us make sure we can go after the people that are hurting them, but at the same time, we can try to get them the services that they need. We're partnered up with BAMSI, which is Brockton Area Multi-Service, and we can make sure they get the services and help that they need. And the goal of this is to help these kids and perhaps break the cycle of child abuse that is out there, because many times the individuals who are defendants today were abused themselves. So we need to make sure we protect our children. We need to make sure that the people that hurt our kids are going to pay a significant criminal penalty. But just as importantly, we need to make sure we can help these kids and stop this cycle.
Well, thank you so much for sharing so much of this information with us today, and we're really excited to have you on the channel and be able to move forward learning more about your office and all of the work and very important work it's doing in our county. We also would like to invite our viewers, if you are interested in suggesting topics or if you're looking for more information about the services that you heard about today, please visit the Plymouth County District Attorney's website. You can also, if you're looking for additional viewings of this episode, please visit pactv.org and click on the video on demand feature on our website, and you'll be able to watch it online, as well as be able to find our channel guide to watch our future playings. Thank you for joining us for this episode of The Scales of Justice.